sun shine. Let the 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 sun shine.
Good evening, Dr. R.G. Allen Whitson. What's happening?
Good evening, love. Good evening. It's good to see you. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while. We haven't talked. I miss you.
I know it's been a while. It's been a while. You know, it's a lot going on. A lot has happened. A lot of new things on the horizon.
Yes. Mr. Can I say that? Can I say Mr. President?
Yes, you can. It's official.
Congratulations, Mster President.
Yes, thank you.
So excited.
Look, you know, as they say, I got a lot. I'm overwhelmed with just the response and everything, and everybody's just like congratulatory and everything like that. But when everybody know your passion, and when you're passionate about something, and everybody know how I bleed blue, and I, uplift us, and just really just want everybody to succeed, you know, not just one person, but everybody. That's so the right. Baby bison, the old bison, the future bison,
the in-between bison, all
bison, all of that. Mm-hmm. I'm all about that, and all about us winning. And if we don't win, other HBCUs to win. If other HBCUs not to win, just everybody black. I'm just rooting for everybody black.
Everybody. Black.
Bet on it, because I know it. I know it's good stuff. You know, you get your money worth. Hey, so everybody out there, thank y'all for joining the show. How y'all doing? We've been a while. We've been away. I'm rejuvenated. Everything is good. It's pumping. A lot is happening in the world. We're gonna talk about all of this good stuff. Well, it's not good stuff, but it's kind of like part 2 of COVID fatigue, because everybody is upset with what's going on, and it just seemed like it's just so much misinformation. We at the crossroad of COVID and at the crossroad of Black Lives Matter, and what's gonna stick, what really matters, and a lot of people are really just trying to just figure it out and enjoy their summer at the same time. And everybody want to get out the house because they've been locked up all this time. And so everybody's ready to kind of like go in out there and let their guard down. Well, we want to talk to y'all about not letting your guard down and making sure that we stand your ground. So, and hold firm, because COVID ain't going anywhere, because we have poor leadership in the White House right now. So I want to welcome to the show Matia, Cheryl, Leslie, Lori, Courtney, Cecil. What's happening, Mr. Cecil? Sham, what's going on? All you guys, all you good people out there, thank y'all for joining the show. Welcome. Shirley Curly. Yeah. So, hey, Melanie, what's going on? Melanie got that hair done, I saw. Got to the salon. So, okay, so let's just jump into it, because we got a lot of stuff going on with the protests erupting, a lot of complaints, things still being closed down, which is essentially, you know, everybody is in different stages all over. Some people in stage 2, some people in stage 3, some people were in stage 3, now they're going back to stage 2. Dr. Fauci is on the news talking about, hey, we trying to hold this thing together. And at the same point in time, you got the president of Brazil talking about he just got COVID. You got Keisha Bottoms got COVID. The White House, everybody, his staff got COVID except him and Pence. You know,
which is odd, right?
It's very odd.
Even his son's girlfriend has COVID.
Yeah, so it's a lot of people there in the vicinity, but nothing is really happening. Then we also have we had this crossroad of, you know, companies really trying to do work for us in the Black community. But then what does that really mean if you're a Black professional in corporate America, and what are you trying to do? Everybody wants you to talk on Black issues right now. Everybody wants you to talk about your experience right now. And they've been doing this over and over and over and over on repeat. But a lot of people are burnt out, and they don't know when to stop and when to stop. So we want to talk to people and get kind of people a little relief, because I think everybody is a little exhausted. They're tired. Like I said, they want to escape. They don't know how to escape. What's up, sis? Leontine.
Hey, Teen. Hey, Teen. Curly's on. Hey, Curly.
I know. What's going on, Curly?
Hello.
Thank you. So a lot of people are fatigued and a lot of people are exhausted. And people want to get out. I know I've been able to escape and go to the beach. And that's my reprieve. And New York got enough beaches that I know exactly where to go and not and social distance myself and not be.
Yeah, because some beaches are not social distant at all.
Right. So we got extensively, like I said, early signs of COVID fatigue. Now that brings us to, reopening numbers. Numbers are rising. If there's another shutdown, what can be done to curb COVID fatigue if we have another shutdown? Because the president is saying he want to just move through it. But at the same point in time, you got people that are very apprehensive about going out, still apprehensive. People still have been locked up. And then you have people in the southern states that have not gone, that have been out, but now it's really hitting down south more so than anywhere else. I think we only had like 240 cases yesterday in New York, out of whole New York City. That's now 9.3 million people, and you only had 240 cases, whereas everywhere else is looking at 3,000, 4,000 cases a day. We're looking at around 200 cases a day in New York.
That's awesome.
So you can tell exactly like what Cuomo put in place worked.
It's working.
And then, it's working. And New Jersey numbers are the same. Connecticut numbers are the same. That was the trifecta that put things together. So what is your advice? Because you're starting to see a lot of people who are coming to you, talking to you about, hey, I am at a crossroad. I'm stressed with the job. I'm stressed with staying in the house. I'm stressed with just hearing everything about Black Lives Matter. I'm stressed about COVID and the numbers going up. And it feel like I've been on lockdown all this time. What can I do to relieve that stress? And what can I do so I won't be fatigued?
Well, I mean, that's a good one, Charlie. I mean, I think everybody has to have their own, what I call come to Jesus meeting, if you will. Because the truth is, many people who are very, very stressed are often people who kind of rebelled anyway. Like they might have followed the rules, but kind of in their head, they're like, this got to be over and it's got to be over soon. And so they didn't shift. They didn't do a mind shift, if you will, to this is a marathon, not a sprint. So as a result of, Fauci and others saying like, this ain't over yet, many people felt like, okay, well, if I do what I need to do in the short term, then maybe this will be over quickly and then I can just move on. That just didn't happen. So now what I'm saying to people in the practice is we got to reboot, right? We got to reboot your mind to readjust to this new norm that many people have been creating. That doesn't mean that you won't be tired, because anytime we transition to something that's new, something we've never done before, and none of us has been in a pandemic like this before, and we certainly haven't been in the convergence or the intersectionality of these two viruses, one being COVID-19, the other being systemic racism, right? And all the racial unrest and social inequities that collided like the perfect storm, if you will.
Yep.
And the truth is, the people who had been using the last 3 months to reflect, to restore, to rejuvenate, to refuel, to really redefine and redesign their lives, like you and I have talked about, those people are still in their process, but they're further along. So they may be a little fatigued, but they're not like overwhelmed by it, because they were doing the work during the time that we were all in and saying, I'm going to use this to my benefit, right? Because never before had anybody been underscheduled. We were all overscheduled. The kids were overscheduled. The adults were overscheduled. Everybody was overscheduled. And then we got to a place where, yes, people were tired of Zoom, but at least we didn't have the travel time. We didn't have to go out. We were saving money by not necessarily going out to restaurants. So there was a lot of good things that could happen by us being inside. But the people who didn't pay attention to that are there. You right on time for you. Right on time for the ambulance. So what I'm saying to people now is it's not too late to do a shift prompt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not too late for that. So in the very beginning, let's go back to what we started when we were talking about quarantine fatigue or COVID-19 fatigue before. We said, adjust your mindset. First, you accept. You've got to accept what's happening.
Right.
That this is not over and it's not going to be over anytime soon. The acceptance is healing. The sooner we accept our new reality, the better we can then begin to readjust. Next step, readjust your mindset. Now that I've accepted it, now that I know that it's a marathon, not a sprint, now that I'm a little bit behind, let me catch up with adjusting my mindset so that I can really sink my teeth into the new reality.
Right.
Adapt. That's what you and I were doing. Adapting, creating new techniques, new strategies to deal with this paradigm shift that we all have been in for the last 4 months or 17 weeks, if you will. That adaptation is how we all survive because it's our coping mechanism.
Right.
Since the beginning of time, we have had to adapt to everything. We as clinicians call it adaptation. It's the evolution of life because nothing is constant but change.
Right.
But we kind of function like change is not going to happen to us, and then we're blindsided when it does happen, right?
You know, what's funny about that? I was showing a client because we just went back to work on the 22nd of June.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to go out and show a client a property, and I was showing a client a property, and a broker said to me, "Oh, well, when we go back to normal." And I looked at her and I just shook my head and I said, "This is the normal. This is normal.
This is the new normal. Newsflash, the memo."
Right. So as soon as you accept it, you'll be able to deal with it.
Right.
And you'll be able to get into, you know what, I leave. It's just like those 3 things you always used to have when you walked out the door: my keys, my wallet, and my cell phone. Well, now it's keys, wallet, cell phone, and mask, you know,
Right.
and any sanitizer or glove or whatever, in addition, that you want to take out with you. And that is the norm. And if you just start getting that into your head, it's easier to, like you say, to accept the new normal.
Exactly.
And then therefore it won't be that so difficult, because what you see now with all of the fighting in stores and people fighting not to wear a mask to go into a place. And, you know, I said we are 50 divided states of America, not 50 United States of America, because every state has their own rule when it comes down to wearing a mask, socially distancing, where we are with opening. We didn't have a national plan that we talked about on this show from the beginning. And now we're seeing the effects of that.
That's right. That's right.
So, you know, so I think it goes hand in hand with what you're saying as far as the readjusting that mindset and then being able to adapt to that mindset. Because I done got almost used to working at home that I don't even want to go out and show people, you know, and be like, "I'm good. Can I just send you a video?"
Well, what happens is people are like, and I just got a couple requests to go back into the office for therapy. And I was like, no, we're not doing that. We're going to be doing this through the duration of the summer, because I also work with children. So there's a huge liability issue there when I bring people into a small office. Not only do I not want to get sick, but I don't want to infect anyone else, right? And I don't want anyone to be walking around as super spreaders. So the thing about it is there's a sphere of influence that we've always dealt with, where people try to influence or create allies, get a person on your side or another side. And we like to debate for whatever reason about whether this is good or bad, whether we should wear a mask or not wear a mask, whether we should socially distance or not. And whatever we resist is usually the area where we have more work to do. So the people that are resisting that this actual pandemic is a thing are the ones that are actually the ones that are getting upset and more frustrated, and you've got more aggression out there and more conflict. And of course, we've got the convergence of the Black Lives Matter that has elevated the level of consciousness. But when consciousness is elevated, it causes people to actually be a little bit more upset because it's disrupted their ecosystem, how they their mindset, how they think, what they do. And so what I would say, Charlie, too, is that if we're going to deal with this COVID fatigue, we also have to begin to appreciate where we're at, right? There's a level of appreciation that for many of us, we don't really take into consideration that, hey, if we have gotten to 17 weeks of quarantine and we're healthy, or we got sick and we recovered, or our families did, or we dealt with all of those challenges, how about we appreciate and be grateful for where we are now because we're still here, right?
Right.
And perhaps our friends are still here. So there's a shift there where you can say, okay, how are we going to move forward? We got this far. Let's not stop. Let's appreciate how far we've come, and then acknowledge a new attitude that's going to move us in a different direction.
Yeah, because there have been a lot of things I've been seeing where people are like, now I understand the comment. It was probably about a month ago when people were saying that the new people who were getting infected were the people who were going out, who had been locked up all this time. And then they went out and then they got infected. And I think it comes a time where you're like, okay, I'm exhausted with this thing. Let me go out and I'm just going to live my normal life, and try to just, go to a party or go to this thing or go to a function or go to a restaurant or whatever the case may be. And then they got sick, and so I think everybody has a different timetable on how much they can take per se.
Well, sure.
So
everybody has a saturation point, right?
Yeah.
Their capacity, one person's capacity may be larger than another. I will tell you, my teenage kids that I work with in therapy who are introverts have no problem. They're like, I'm good. And then I'm always checking their temperature to say, how are you doing with the quarantine or whatever? They're like, I'm in my room. I can do my therapy. I can do my schoolwork. Like, I don't have to go out. They're playing their games. It's typically the extroverts that are having a lot of difficulty with this because they do feel like they are locked. You said that a couple times, and it's reframing your words as well. Because if you think you're locked up, then you're right, you're locked up. But Helen Nurse used this word in the very beginning when you interviewed her family. She said, I stopped saying that I was stuck at home or that we were stuck at home. And I started saying we were safe at home. And
right.
and just the tweak of the word can shift you, do the shift prompt so that you can start thinking about it differently, because 90% of what happens is typically, I'll say 10% is what happens. 90% is how you perceive what has happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of real estate, if you will, up in your head about how you will experience this. And the fatigue part, yes, let's acknowledge that we're tired of being in the house. But then once you've acknowledged it, the question is, what will you do? Will you take that false choice? Because that's what I call it, a false choice. To go out there in the elements right now, in the midst of a potential second surge, is a false choice. Because like you said, the new cases are people who have gotten tired and they say, the hell with it. I'm just going to go do my thing. Well, could it be possible for you to go do your thing, like you've gone to the beach, and still be smart about it?
Right.
Right? Write a list of all the things that you want to do that you really can't do this year, but you could actually tweak them and do something different. Like, I like going for rides.
Right.
So get in the car if you got a car and just ride.
Right. And I my whole thing of what I set out, because like I said, 2020 was canceled. So it was done. So it was all about road trips. So it's all about little small road trips, discovering
flying to another countries and stuff like that.
Yeah, none of that. Like those 5 people who were on Italy on a plane, they flew to Italy, and Italy was like, no, you're on the danger list.
Go back to
America. So they got turned around. But, I looked at it that way, and I said, you know what? This is all about, redefining what it is that we normally do. So it's almost kind of like going back to when you didn't have any money, and you would do a road trip, and you'd be like, get in the car, and, and you go. So it's all about discovering New York State for me. So going up to the Catskills, going up to Lake George, going to Finger Lakes, going up to Woodstock.
I've heard of Finger Lakes. I haven't been there yet.
Yeah, we're doing all that kind of stuff and doing that. And then also too, I think creating your own social bubble, as they say, your social bubble of people that you know that you have identified that
are socially distant too,
that know how to social distance, that are responsible, that know if they've been overexposed. And when I say overexposed, meaning that they've been around too many people recently, that they're not going to come back in and say, "Oh, let's just," and continue.
No, they're going to go get tested.
They're going to go get tested, and then stay at home and say, "You know what? Let me monitor myself before I go back out."
Yeah,
and I'm not going to do that. You know, and so that's what I've created here in New York. It's been a social bubble of different groups of individuals that I know. Just because when we started this, having conversations with each other about you home, you know, you've been out, you know, whatever the case, and we'll talk and be real about it. You'd be like, you know what, I think I need to stay away and just stay at home and be quarantined because I've been around too many elements right now. And
that happened with Morgan and I when we had some work done in the house, and then we were invited to, someone else's house that was socially distanced, and we were like, you know what, we had. This person that was doing some electrical work, they came back 3 or 4 times. They were all over the house. Of course, I did the cleaning, but then we went and got tested, and we stayed away for a couple of weeks just to make sure, because other than that, we had been quarantining.
Right.
So, that's important too. And then people can't listen. We don't like to deal with ourselves. We don't. We spend a lot of time running away from ourselves.
All right, preach it, because that's what that's half the battle. Because what I've also seen too is that people just, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying, the person came into the office that where I work, and the person just went off like things were just normal, like just went off like things were just normal. And he was like, well, hey, how are you? We're in the midst of an epidemic. We've got Black Lives Matter that's going on and all of these things. And the first thing you do is just go off like nothing has happened, like there's no change. So you can see that there are people who are still, if you're a nasty person, it seems like some people are just going to still be that nasty person. And they haven't done the work and realize they need to do the work. And so,
Charlie, when crisis hits, 2 things that I would say to people: that the extent to a healthy relationship is not how well we do when things are good. Anybody can do okay when things are good. It's how well we do when things are not so good. That will give you the indicator of whether or not you have a strong foundation. A house will crumble and a relationship if you don't have a strong foundation, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is that when we don't deal with ourselves, as you and I say, when you don't do the work, then when you have challenges in life, you feel like you've been blindsided. And what many people will say, and I hear people say, why is this happening to me? As if this is not happening all over the globe, right? That this is not a global pandemic. This is just not happening to you. But we've been socialized to be in this rugged individualistic society where we believe that everything good, if it, somebody else is celebrating, it's our celebration, it happened to me. And if it's bad, then it's all about me too.
Right.
And people have to start dealing with themselves. We have to start dealing with our own injuries. We have to start dealing with the fact that many of us have not resolved our issues, whatever they are, and that we've been running away from our issues so we don't have to deal with them. And this pandemic has forced us to have a reckoning, not only with the 400 years of systemic racism and inequities and social injustices, because we're dealing with that now, but also a reckoning with ourselves, because we're dealing with, we're dealing with 3 viruses: COVID-19, external racism, externalized racism, and internalized racism, which is where all the frustration, and I feel like people are like a ticking time bomb. And that's where all of this violence is coming from. And I get it when people are frustrated, as MLK said, that riots are the language of the unheard. We've been frustrated and we've not felt like we were heard. But we all also have to be go on and be honest that we have not been so kind to ourselves either. And all of that running away from ourselves, as I say to people, it's like a shadow. Nowhere, matter where you go, there you are. So you can run, but you can't hide.
Right, right. You know, Leslie brought up a good point here. She said this is so similar to the AIDS epidemic. In the beginning, there was an absolute fear, but we now know the fear was based on ignorance and not just understanding what it is. Once we begin to know how the disease spread, we regain our power and figure out how to live in the reality and adjust our behaviors. That is so poignant and so on point that I can't even say. Same thing with COVID. Knowledge is power, and we figure this out, except that from now, our normal will look different. And it's so true. It's just that you, right now, until we can get a vaccine or whatever the case may be, we got to adapt this behavior, adapt to this and adjust to this behavior for us to live. And so those people, and like, that's why I think people in New York and Jersey and Connecticut, where you see the numbers are really low, is because the numbers are really low based on the fact that people were educated about the virus. People knew, okay, masks will help. You know, you socially distance yourself and you wear your mask. You don't have to worry about going in. Wash your hands, wear your mask. You're good.
Very simple things.
Very
simple things.
Yeah, you know, and so I will say the majority of people, when you go out in New York, I will say at least, and I have to say 90%, maybe 95% of the people have on masks. There's that 5% that you don't see, and nobody's, and it's a mandate by the state that you must wear a mask.
Well, you all have a good leader.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you know, there's a lot to be said for leadership in every system, whether it be state to state, whether it be the country, whether it be leadership in your own home, right? And if you're a unit of one, then I'd ask you to say, how are you leading yourself? Are you abiding by the things that will keep you safe and doing the necessary things? If you're a leader of a family with a spouse and children, then what are you doing to set the tone? Because how you set the tone from the top has implications for how people will follow or what they will do. You know, and that doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean that it feels great. It doesn't mean that it won't be hard. That's just a part of life, right? That this mindset that the life that we live is going to be, you know, cake and roses and cherries and, you know, with sprinkles on top 24/7 is a falsehood. You know, that's just not life. There's twists and turns and ups and downs and trials and tribulations. And part of the beauty of it is that we get to grow in the midst of a storm, right? Storms are meant to correct us, connect us, you know, storms are meant to challenge us, if you will. And the beauty of it is that you can grow through it and get to the other side, that this too shall pass.
Yep. Big time. Well, let's forward this conversation, move this, you know, conversation down the line. A lot of college kids, and we're at the crossroads now of trying to figure out what colleges are going to do. Are they going to come back on campus? A lot of people are redoing their, you know, coming up with their plans. So some colleges are like, we're not having first semester at all. It's going to be totally online. And then you have what Howard did with, they formed a consortium of all the schools in DC. So Howard, Georgetown, George Mason, Catholic, Trinity, you name it, UDC, all of them came together and said, what is going to be our reopening plan in order to make this happen? So they're coming back on campus right now, today, if the numbers hold steady, they're coming back on campus right now. They're coming back a little later, but they're coming back, and they're going to come back like August 24th to November 24th, and then they're going to take a whole month off. But then there's all this testing and everything like that. And I think a lot of kids want that experience. They want to go back because they feel like, first of all, they feel like they were robbed of their last semester anyway. So they need to go back and feel that sense of connection, you know, real touch, real sense of connection. So as dangerous as it may be, that's what their mindset is doing. You got to think of it. You know, I think everything happens when you're a different age group. You understand you know, so they feel as though they're invincible, and nothing is going to happen to them. They'll get sick or they'll have it, and they really don't care. But, you know, how do you talk to your college kids about that, or parents with college kids who have kids who can be a danger to the family?
You know, that's a big one. In fact, last night I did a talk, a group therapy talk with Jack and Jill of America, the moms. And that was a question that one of the moms asked, because one mom asked about her 16-year-old and the other mom was asking about her 21-year-old, because the 21-year-old just had it. She just wants to go out and she's ready to go back to school. And I encourage them to sit down and have a contract with each other to say, listen, I hear them out with regards to their frustrations, because we do want to be heard. And when we don't feel that we're heard, oftentimes we will pivot to who will hear us and validate us, because most of us want someone to be our ally, if we will. So if the parents won't be our allies, then we'll go find our friends to co-sign whatever bad behavior or unhealthy behavior we exhibit. So listen, then learn what they're experiencing, and then lead from that perspective. Listen, learn, and lead. And as you have those conversations, then list the things that everyone can do, whether they're in the house or not in the house, to keep everyone safe. And really, they asked, should we talk about the harsh realities, which is that what if someone is asymptomatic and becomes a super spreader, brings it home and gives it to grandma, let's say, or, you know, someone in their family, and they die. Like, play the scenario all the way through for the young person, not to guilt them, not to shame them, and not to blame them, but to prevent the ultimate horrible event from happening by saying, this could be our reality. How do we mitigate that as a whole? Because we have to work together. And then map it out. Have them write, what do you think that we should do, so that they feel like they've got skin in the game and that they've invested in the ideas. Write them all down and everybody signs them. That becomes your family contractual agreement, whether you go back to school or whether you don't go back to school, in terms of how you govern yourself. And sometimes what happens is, if we write things down and we sign them, then we can't, one thing for sure, we can't say that we never heard it. We can't say, oh, I misunderstood. No, you have a copy that we all signed. Everybody has a copy. And this is our familial agreement for now. If things change, we'll revisit. We'll also have weekly meetings to update what's happening, so that we're all on the same page. Because too often, and this is what we used to do, Charlie, we never had contracts, but we used to sit down and talk to our families on the porch, or, you know, over a meal, and talk about our day. Like, that was old school. That's what we got to get back to. And not all this sort of splintering and being fragmented and getting our information from everyone else rather than the people in our own homes.
True. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that. It's all about proper conversation and communication, and especially in the home. So therefore, everybody has a real understanding. Because I remember just sitting down and having dinner every night with my mother and father, and we just used to talk about politics. We used to talk about business. We used to talk about whatever, you know, personal stuff, civic stuff, social stuff. And, you know, it would be a great debate. You know, as you got of age, it would be a great debate. Oh, daddy, you don't know what you're talking about, you know, and stuff like that. And I don't see kids doing that, having that conversation with their parents, because everybody's on their phone and on their mobile devices, and they just checked out, you know. And it's like, I'm going to my room. I don't see you. You don't see me.
Right.
We have no conversation. So
like, tap back in, and then find common ground. You don't have to agree on everything. You're not going to agree on everything. But where can you find common ground and come to a quorum or a consensus about, this is how we're going to move forward. This is how we're going to operate for now, because the ultimate goal is to keep everyone safe.
Right. And you know what I think also too, amongst that conversation, when you have that conversation, you can actually see kids today who really have that mature sensibility about themselves, because you can tell when they've had conversations, whereas people who check out and they just say, oh my God, you don't like my idea, and then they run and they hide or cry or say he was cruel to me because they didn't agree with what I had to say. So you can tell there's not that in family dialogue, people going back and forth, and just that's where you learn to debate. You know,
That's right.
You always don't get a yes from your father and your mother. You know, and you know, and they would say, well, why you want to do that? And then you had to prove your point. You know, like you know, and so that's amazing to me now today that you don't see the kids having that, because I think a lot of parents have failed their kids in not, you know, being there. Like you said, overscheduling.
Everybody's latchkey kids. Nobody's sitting down at the dinner table, having hard, courageous conversations about life and very significant things. You'd be surprised at how you'd be able to bridge the gap between one generation to the next around thoughts that each person has, which you don't even realize that you had those thoughts, right? You know, because you're not having the conversation, you know, and when you teach people that, here's what I say, even in the book, Charlie, that these courageous conversations, these hard conversations, they actually connect. The reason why people don't have them is because they think that it's going to blow up. We're going to hate each other. We're going to, you know, we're going to say things that we regret. And actually, when you stay poised and you say, no, but this is what I believe, you find that you have more in common than not, right? And that you're more united than divided on some things, and that you can actually agree to disagree on some things and still love each other and still like each other.
True. Major truth. One other thing, and we're going to shift off of COVID and kind of go into the whole Black Lives Matter and the Black Lives Matter fatigue, you know, for a lot of people. You have a lot of the majority white race who are now having to deal with this, whether it be personal or whether it be through work. You know, now we need to, you know, you see it in the entertainment industry where you see a lot of people are, for instance, at Netflix and HBO and Warner Media and all these places where now they're trying to create their catalog and make sure they put out all their Black content, and they're rushing to get every Black director involved. They're rushing to make sure they get, you know, all of these Black things, putting a cover on. And a lot of white people are really having a hard time understanding the whole Black Lives Matter situation. And they are having their fatigue, per se. But I always say, if you've been in my shoes for the last 53 years, you understand I'm tired, you know? So if you're tired and you've just been dealing with this for the last month, think about dealing with race for 53 years. So that's my answer to that, you know? But are you working with individuals who are coming in, who are having to do the work at their job and trying to be the mouthpiece for all Black people?
Well, I'm working with people in the practice that are being asked to be the mouthpiece, and I'm inviting them to have another courageous conversation about why you would come to the one Black person to ask them to speak for all Black people as if we're a monolith. And then I'm inviting them to say no. If you really want to invest in this whole structure and learn more, then one, do your work, two, hire an outside consultant and pay to actually have someone who's trained to have these discussions, to really unpack what has happened and how these structures have been built up in order to hold one group or one race of people down and another race of people up. Invest in it. Don't do the cheap. Don't cheapen this moment by asking for someone that is really tired of educating anyway to educate you. And as Mel Robbins said on the show, because you'll be on the show tomorrow. Yay. Right. So
wake me up.
I'm gonna wake you up so you can be on the show tomorrow. And then Mel Robbins was on the show a couple of weeks ago, and she said that she was talking to her kids, and she said that her kids said, we don't even know, we're so uncomfortable having these conversations. And she said, well, if you're uncomfortable having the conversations, how do you think Black people feel living it? And that's, that's a good way to look at it, because what we need to, we do have to have the conversations, but the conversations are multi-layered. So white people need to be having conversation, especially if you call yourself a white ally and you want to do this anti-racist work, then you need to be talking to other white people and holding them accountable for all of the implicit biases and the things that they've co-signed and been silent around from the streets to the suites forever, for 401 years. Have that conversation while we're over here trying to deal with all of our trauma and our internalized racism. And then we can come together and say, okay, let's roll up our sleeves and do the work. And the work is not a blurb. It is not, we agree with Black Lives Matter. Now let's go back to work. That's not the work. The work is to look at all of the layers within the structures and see where they have been unjust when it comes to Black and brown people, and then start making sure that we have a seat at the table to actually change policy and practices in order to shift the system so it is equitable for all people. Mm-hmm. That's going to give us some relief if people start doing that. But if they don't, these systems, all it's going to do is frustrate us more. And we're going to feel like this is more of the same. And that even with all of this uprising, we're still where we were.
Yeah. I mean, and you know companies that are doing goodwill and that are doing the right things. Mm-hmm. And I had, I forgot who I had on the show, and I was talking about David Kinney at Nielsen, who really was talking about how he is the chief D&I officer as well as the CEO. So he has incorporated every layer in his organization to come up with a metric system to make sure that all managers are held accountable for making sure that their office is diverse, people are being challenged, that they're going out and getting talent, whether it be Black, white, Asian, Latinx, all of that, whether you're bringing the best people to the table, but also at the same point in time, you are making sure that people really have a voice into this system. There was an article that I was reading about with Netflix, where all the other media entertainment companies are trying to deal with and catch up right now with Black content, for instance. Well, Netflix now, if you go to Netflix, they got a whole content of Black movies, and they've been doing it in content, and they're the most diverse right now at the table when it comes down to in the entertainment. So there are companies that have been doing the work, there are companies that are starting to do the work, and then there are companies that are just trying to put a Band-Aid over the situation and keep it moving and hope that this is going to wear off and say, okay, we gave a little money here and we did a little town hall and everything, and then that Black person is sitting there like, oh my God, this is not happening, and they feel trapped, Well,
I will tell you that I have a lot of clients that are reconsidering where they're working, and they're, up at high levels of their organizations, and they're saying if they could leave now, they would, because it's been crickets, and it's been very silent in many of these places where they felt like they could just say a little something, write a little piece, a little article, say we're with you, and they're not really with us, right? Because words don't matter unless you have action behind those words.
Right. And I know in my business here in New York, in real estate,
not happening.
It's laughable, I just laugh at the whole situation because I always laugh at the fact that I have to go spend 3.75 hours in fair housing class. Why do I have to do that? Because you just can't sell a house to a Black person or to a Hispanic person. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things. It's just, in our industry, you look at the panels, always just white,
sea of whiteness, huh? Sea of whiteness.
It's like, these only people know how to speak. They only know how to talk about certain. It's so done. It's just so overplayed. And there are industries out here that are doing well, and there are industries that need a lot of help. And real estate is one of those industries that need a lot of help when it comes to that issue, because you can see it in their offices. in their suites, in their managers, or anything. I mean, I was the first manager at City Habitats. I was one of the first managers at a small boutique firm here in New York at Warburg. You know, and you just don't see it. You know, and it's really sad at the end of the day. But anyway,
well, for white folks, they have to be the ones to elevate the conversation as well, because if they don't, then it's more the same, that they're raised in the same system, and the difference is that system has raised them up to have unfair power and unearned power, and the same system that we're in, you know, gives us unequitable, you know, power, or less power, if you will.
Right. Yeah, you sit at the table and you're looking at them and you're like, okay. Anyway, I don't even want to go off into it because that's a whole nother conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So in conclusion, because we're almost up in our time and everything.
Oh, Tanya's on. Tanya, I see Velva, Ethan.
Curly said, my company, Chevron, here in Houston, has a strong, sustainable program in place to support the movement. I would love to know more about that, Curly. If you could drop in a little bit more comments about what they're doing, that would be great. But there's some really good companies out here that have it right and know. I mean, I just tell people any day, just walk in your room and sit at the table and just watch and just look at the room for just one check. Just look, and when you have a meeting, just do a check. Look around and say, you know what, y'all, we got.
I will tell you everything you need to know in a millisecond if you just look around the room.
Yeah, because you look around the room and there's no diversity there, you got a problem.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And I encourage people to think about their flashbacks, Charlie, because I think that we don't realize how much trauma we have endured in these systems, because we've absorbed most of it. And we've been told that, you know, just shake it off. It's not a big deal. Work harder, work faster, leap further, just to have a seat at the table, or just get to half of what our white counterparts have gotten. And that's trauma for us, but we don't recognize it as trauma. And now we're starting to look at what has happened to us and what has happened around us with our counterparts. And I think that's very, very important, because you know, I'm a proponent of healing, but in order to heal, you have to feel. But I think that we've numbed ourselves because we had to in order to survive. And now we're thawing out, if you will, and a lot of that emotion is welling up. We have to learn how to manage, understand that emotion, acknowledge it, and then figure out how to manage it so that rage gets channeled in a healthy way. Right. Once we start to get out of that numbing state and realize, oh, for the last 20 years I've been at this company and I've been absorbing all of these microaggressions, all these implicit biases, all these comments. I've been just taking it on the chin. And then no wonder why I'm agitated all the time.
Right.
Or my cholesterol levels up, or my hypertension, or all that. It's mind, body, and spirit is all connected. So that's another form of fatigue that we've endured for years. And we have to start doing some self-care stuff in order to better manage all of that we have to deal with, in order to be better, you know, better versions of ourselves, and also better to our family and friends.
And also too, I mean, you know, you got a lot of Black people who are been in their bubble. You know, they might have been the only one in their particular organization, their town. I remember I left Howard and went to Ohio. I was 5 of 2,500 employees. There were only five Black employees
out of 2,500.
Out of 2,500. And it was just like, I went into a twilight world, you know, zone, and it was amazing. But if I had stayed there in that environment, I would have been sick as a dog. And I realized, you know, that was a 2-year in. Let me go to grad school, get what I could out of that, put it on the resume, and keep it moving. When
you ask Charlie why there are more people of color, you often will get the response, "Oh, we can't find good Black talent."
Well, I had the opposite. They said that they were not coming back to Howard or Hampton anymore because we wanted to conquer the world.
Well, at least they were honest about how they felt, because we do, and we are.
And that's exactly what I did. I wanted to conquer the world at 22. And so, but that happened. And those are the conversations we're all having in these silos. And now I think we're at a point where everything is just bubbled up, and everybody has realized this is the rage that's inside of me. Like I said, I don't want revenge. I just want equity, equality. And that's the biggest thing.
What I'm deserving of.
Of what I'm deserving of. I'm not saying just give it to me. Nobody wants something given to me, at least not my people I hang around with. We want to work for it, get our due, and be rewarded, just like anybody else. But that doesn't happen always. And we know it doesn't happen. And I think that is what you're talking about and what I love about where we are now in a modern day society, because it's people like yourself that can help us realize what it is that people have been going through over the course of these years. Whereas before, therapy was a no-no in the African-American community, and nobody wanted to have it. And they were like, yeah, you better chalk it up to God and go to God in prayer and see God. Well, God can't create and do everything. That's why he put everybody here for a reason.
That's right. We can have Jesus and a therapist.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
And totally now for, African-American men who are in corporate America, you see that, you see what they have to go through. If you imagine what they have to go through on the street, then you have to, what they go through in the suites. So
that's right.
Same thing over and over, and being watched and being sexualized,
micromanaged,
all of that, everything that happens with you when we go into corporate America and in anything that we do, and how you see it play out on the streets now with all these people having all these antics and outbursts every day, whether you're in Walmart, whether you're in, Target.
It's that rage. It's rage. And people have to process it. If you do not process your emotion, you will become a ticking time bomb. And as I said, you will explode or you will implode.
Right.
We have to process our emotions, and we have to do it ongoingly so that we don't hurt ourselves, harm ourselves, or hurt our people who we love. Because you get in an argument with somebody in the street or in a Walmart, and they kill you, you kill them. Now you go to jail. Now your whole family is without you.
Right.
It's not worth it.
Right.
Do the work.
Yes.
Right? Because we certainly have enough trauma to go around, and hopefully we're doing a better job of having therapists of color that can work with us, because I am all for therapist matching, because a lot of times we don't, if you're a therapist of color, you may not know everything about every fashion of the Black community, but in some ways you don't have to do the gymnastics of, the client trying to tell you, what's going on in their community, right? You don't, some of that because you're experiencing it yourself.
Exactly. So, and you can easily identify, this person is dealing with trauma because they've been in a situation or a position a little bit too long. They took on too much, and they don't know how to remove themselves from that. And it is also your upbringing, your structure of how you were raised, if you can deal with so much of that pain, so much of that trauma. I know for me personally, as my father said to me, I'm giving you an education basically for you to go work for yourself, not to go work for anybody else, because you're going to, one, be smarter, and two, you're going to work harder. And it's just, you're going to have the freedom of self. And I understand what that means. When you have that freedom, then you can come out here and you can dictate and tell people what you want them to do, as opposed to vice versa.
Them telling you, and it's yours to use, or to make it or not.
Exactly.
Use it or lose it.
Yeah.
Like, everybody doesn't have a dad or a family that was entrepreneurs who actually would instill that. And so for many people, even those of us who went to Howard, you're taught, go to school, get a good education, get a good job, work your way up the ladder. You get up there, then you've made it, then you get your pension, you retire, you live a good life, right? That happens for some people, but I will say that there is also a cost to pay for that life too, right? Because you get up there and you realize, ooh, I'm the only one here. Like, how's this going to work?
Exactly. And it's lonely at the top, So you always got to be, I say, stewards. And for me, I've always been a connector in that self of bringing people along and bringing people up. No matter if they do you wrong or not, there's another person that's just as good to bring along, and get rid of that person, bring in another person. Because I learned that from my father. My father would actually hire people 5 times over. He'd be like, okay, basically, you got your shit together, this time around, and
give you that second chance and another chance, because we understand from whence we came, and we have that empathy and that appreciation for our people.
Exactly.
So we're going to give you another chance. Get it together, you know?
Get it together. Come on, let's work it out. What you need work on, help it out and move this thing along. You have to be able and willing to do that. And I know I've been burned, but you know what? I just go keep it moving. I know too many people not to keep it moving, to bring you on to the next person and the next person and the next person and the next person and the next person. And that's not to negate, you know, if I got good white allies that I'm working with and doing business with, I'm going to use them as well. So
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is I am going to pay homage to my people.
Yeah.
And if I don't do it, who's going to do it when everybody else is passing them over and stuff of that nature? So great discussion.
Good discussion.
I love basically what you said when it comes down part 2. If you guys who came on late, if y'all didn't hear Dr. RG talking about, we started out this conversation talking about COVID fatigue part 2, because we're in this thing. This is our new normal. And she basically laid out the rules of basically accepting, readjusting your mindset, and then adapting to what this normal is. And then we move this conversation into basically the fatigue of Black Lives Matter and what's going on, and our counterparts out there who are exhausted, whether it be Black people who are exhausted, speaking up for the entire race, for their company, because they're the only one in that organization, which gives the company, which should put the company on notice already, because you're going to that one person to do everything and speak on that person, on that, and that should let the company know itself that they got work to do. Or whether it be our white counterparts who are exhausted because they are tired of talking about race, because it seems like that's the only thing that they're doing. And as we said before, if you're tired about it, talking about it for these last 4 weeks, we've been talking about it for 52, 53, 54, 62.
401 years, I just say.
Exactly.
I'm just saying.
Exactly.
Yes, we're a little tired right now. We're a little tired. So now, for all the Black people, it's time for us to put our oxygen mask on first and then take care of ourselves.
There you go.
Do our mindfulness, our meditation, go to therapy, use your spiritual resources and your source to help ground you. Treat yourself well, right? Do the necessary things. Since you're going to save some money because you're not going to restaurants and all these kind then you can do the things that are necessary to fill yourself up, to restore, rejuvenate, and redesign, so that when you grow through this, because we will grow through this is a marathon, but as we grow through it, we come out, as I say, better, not bitter. We can do this, Charlie.
There you go. And speaking of that, tomorrow, speaking of 400 years of slavery, I have Mary Elliott, who is the curator of history at the National Museum of African American History in Washington, D.C. And we're going to talk about all her work of what she's doing for the museum, and talking about slavery, and also the effects of Black Lives Matter, and what the museum is doing currently right now to put that on display. Because if you haven't been to that museum, you definitely need to go. You need to talk about it. She's all talking about what she's doing as far as everything from South Carolina to Oklahoma, where she's from, because she's from Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's where her family is from. So it should be an interesting conversation tomorrow night. So I want to thank you guys for coming on, tuning in. Thank you, Dr. RG, for being here at the show.
Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Exactly.
On Quarantine Talks. So we're going to talk about what it's like to be a Black man and deal with not quitting. That's what the conversation, not quitting this week. So looking forward to that conversation too.
Sounds good. Love you, baby.
Love you too.
Talk. Good night.
Let the sun shine. Let the sun shine. Let the sun shine. Let the sun shine.